At 11:51 on a freezing December night, I opened my door. Amanda stood on the porch, snow melting into her hair, clutching 3-year-old Emma. Emma's pink winter boots left wet stains on the mat. Amanda whispered, "Jason brought his mistress home, and Nancy packed our lives into black trash bags before locking the deadbolt." I stepped aside with absolute finality and grabbed my truck keys. "Get inside." They picked the wrong family. I ushered them into my kitchen. The heavy scent of strong black tea and a sharp silence settled in immediately. I didn't coddle Amanda. Panic is a useless metric when a system is crashing. You stabilize the core first. I took Emma from her arms, quietly wrapping the shivering 3-year-old in a thick wool quilt, and sat them by the wood stove. The cast iron radiated heat, but Amanda remained frozen in her soaked sweatshirt. She wasn't trembling from the Minneapolis cold. This was the physiological shock of a sudden, public eviction. I poured 2 mugs of black coffee. No sugar, no comfort, just fuel for the work ahead. I sat across from her and let the silence stretch, giving her time to process the data of her own life without being rushed by my expectations. Amanda stared blankly into her mug. Her hands were raw, clutching the ceramic like it was the only solid thing left in her world. When she finally spoke, her voice was stripped of emotion, reduced to a dry recitation of facts. She detailed how Nancy, Jason's mother, had systematically dismantled her life over the span of a single evening. Nancy hadn't just thrown her out. She had executed a calculated erasure. Amanda described watching Nancy take down every family heirloom Amanda had brought to that house. Photographs, hand-stitched pillows, the small ceramic birds that belonged to Amanda's late mother. Nancy treated their memories like worthless refuse, dropping them into heavy-duty trash bags, while Jason stood by the fireplace, drinking a glass of bourbon with a woman named Jessica. They didn't yell. They didn't argue. They just disposed of her. I listened, cataloging every detail. Anger wasn't loud this time. It was clinical. I looked at Amanda, this brilliant 28-year-old library specialist who had spent the last 5 years quietly managing Jason's household, and I saw exactly what they had done to her. They had treated her affection as a business transaction, a subscription they could simply cancel when they found a newer model. I didn't rub my eyes or summon regret. There was only clarity. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a balance sheet, and Jason and Nancy Vance had just incurred a massive deficit. I asked Amanda for the exact timeline. 11:15, Jason walked in. 11:20, Nancy arrived with the bags. It was a synchronized operation. They had planned this. They wanted the maximum psychological impact. I noted this in my mind. In systems engineering, when a malicious actor breaches your network, you don't cry over the corrupted files. You isolate the breach, trace the origin, and completely dismantle the attacker's infrastructure. That was my exact protocol now. Jason thought he had finalized a clean eviction. He didn't realize he had just initiated a war with someone who understood how to permanently delete his power. I needed to understand the financial architecture of their marriage. I asked Amanda to walk me through their accounts. As she spoke, the entire fraudulent structure of Jason's dominance became crystal clear. Amanda, working as a library specialist, had been paying for all the household expenses, the groceries, the utilities, the daily maintenance of their lives. Meanwhile, Jason hoarded his massive chief financial officer salary in separate, locked accounts. He claimed he was building their empire. In reality, he was building her cage. I pulled up the records of the $150,000 insurance trust fund left by Amanda's late parents. It was meant to be her safety net. A realization dawned on me with the cold precision of a mathematical proof. Jason's sudden confidence, his arrogant decision to bring his mistress into the house. It was all an economic trap. He felt untouchable because he believed he had completely drained her resources. The narrative of their marriage was an intense study in contrast. Jason drove newly purchased luxury vehicles and wore tailored suits, while Amanda clothed herself and Emma in second-hand scraps to protect what she thought were their shared savings. It wasn't just greed. It was psychological warfare. Narcissistic abusers do not destroy you in a single day. They use a method of cruel normalization. They employ constant micro-humiliations to systematically erase a victim's financial and emotional self-worth. Jason and Nancy had conditioned Amanda to believe that she was a burden, that requesting even a single dollar for herself was an act of extreme selfishness. They made her feel like a silent investor in their version of a family, but she was the only one actually funding the operation. By normalizing her deprivation, they broke down her capacity to recognize the abuse. They convinced her that wearing worn-out shoes while her husband bought a second sports car was just the practical reality of being a good wife. I had been the silent investor in their version of family, Amanda whispered, staring at the floor. Now, I realize it had been a subscription, with me footing the bill. I downloaded her banking statements, cross-referencing dates and amounts. I rubbed my eyes, not trying to summon regret, but scanning for clarity. Every second-hand sweater Amanda bought for Emma was proof of Jason's systemic financial starvation. He had stripped her of her dignity, dollar by dollar, but this financial audit was just beginning. I nodded, my fingers flying across the keyboard. They weren't shocked by what they'd done. They were shocked that I had stopped playing along. The trap of normalization only works as long as the victim remains isolated. But Amanda was no longer isolated. She was sitting in my kitchen, and I was retired. I had nothing but time, resources, and a pathological need to balance the equations they had deliberately skewed. Jason Vance thought he was a brilliant chief financial officer. He was about to find out what a real systems engineer could do to his balance sheet. Retaliation, when executed correctly, requires absolute detachment. It was exactly 12 o'clock midnight. I did not engage in an emotional shouting match over text with Jason or Nancy. I did not ask them how they could be so cruel. That would be giving them data, and I give my enemies nothing. Instead, I bypassed the emotional reaction entirely and moved straight to professional escalation. I opened my encrypted drive and began coordinating a calculated counterstrike. My first communication was to Patricia Lang, a ruthless family law attorney operating downtown. Patricia specialized in asset recovery and financial fraud. We had crossed paths during my corporate career, and I knew she operated with the same clinical precision that I did. I drafted a secure email, attaching the certified banking notices, tax records, and real estate documents I had just pulled from Amanda's cloud backup. I outlined the exact timeline of the eviction, the presence of the mistress, and the involvement of Jason's mother. By 7 in the morning, Patricia was on the phone with me, her voice sharp and devoid of pleasantries. She had run an immediate title trace on the property. The discovery was fundamental to our strategy. Jason, in his absolute arrogance, had assumed that because he paid the mortgage from his private account, the house was his. But Patricia confirmed the data. Amanda's name was never legally removed from the property deed. The deadbolt Nancy had turned, the black trash bags she had packed. The entire midnight eviction was entirely illegal. You cannot evict a legal homeowner without a court order. Jason had just handed us our first tactical advantage. We aren't going to argue with them, Patricia stated over the phone. We are going to bury them in procedure. I agreed. This wasn't revenge. It was accounting. I authorized Patricia to draft an ironclad legal notice. It wasn't a plea for Amanda to return. It was a formal declaration giving Jason exactly 30 days to face a formal deposition under oath regarding his financial conduct and the illegal eviction. We documented everything. We cited the specific statutes he and Nancy had violated by forcing a legal resident and a minor out into the freezing Minneapolis night. I spent the hours between midnight and dawn compiling a master dossier. I categorized Jason's tax forms, his bonus schedules, and his offshore equity transfers. I matched them against Amanda's grocery receipts and utility payments. It was a perfect, indisputable record of financial abuse. When Patricia reviewed the dossier, she didn't just see a divorce case, she saw a systemic fraud operation. The 30-day notice for deposition wasn't just a legal formality, it was a psychological weapon. It was designed to force Jason out of his narcissistic delusion and into a sterile, unforgiving legal environment where his executive title meant absolutely nothing. I watched the printers spit out the pages that would dismantle Jason's life. We had established the baseline. We had documented the breach. The retaliation was fully operational. Every malicious actor follows a predictable pattern when their control is threatened. They escalate. By Tuesday morning, Jason and Nancy had launched a vicious gaslighting campaign. They doubled down on their hostility, flooding Amanda's phone with manipulative texts. When Amanda didn't respond, maintaining the strict communication blackout I had mandated, they pivoted to public defamation. Nancy began posting fabricated lies on social media, claiming that Amanda had abandoned her family due to mental instability. She painted Jason as a devoted, heartbroken father left to pick up the pieces. It was a textbook, arrogant counterattack designed to force Amanda into a defensive position. But I don't play defense. I requested a civil standby officer from the local precinct to accompany us to the property. The objective was purely logistical, to retrieve Emma's winter clothing and essential belongings. We arrived at the house under a heavy, overcast sky. Jason's new sports car sat in the driveway. The officer knocked, and Nancy answered the door, her smug expression instantly faltering at the sight of the uniform. The officer immediately noted Amanda's legal status on the deed, signaling that any interference from Nancy would result in an arrest. We bypassed her completely, walking through the house in silence. I watched Amanda navigate the space she had once called home. She didn't weep. She moved with clinical efficiency, packing Emma's clothes into duffel bags, but the critical variable wasn't inside the house. I stepped out the back door, scanning the perimeter. Nancy, in her rush to erase Amanda's presence, had dumped several boxes of personal items outside in the freezing weather. I walked toward the old outdoor dog kennel at the edge of the property. Amanda followed me. Lying face down in the frozen dirt, discarded like garbage, was Amanda's mother's old porcelain doll. Nancy had specifically targeted it, knowing its emotional value. Amanda knelt in the dirt and picked up the doll. The ceramic face was cracked, the antique dress stained with mud. But as she lifted it, something rattled inside. Amanda paused, her brow furrowing. She turned the doll over and carefully popped open the hollow ceramic base. A small, black square dropped into her palm. A micro memory card. I stared at the tiny piece of plastic. I knew immediately what it was. Amanda had been the one to back up Jason's home office servers months ago when his hard drive crashed. She had placed the raw, unencrypted data on this card and hidden it inside the doll for safekeeping, knowing Jason would never touch her mother's heirlooms. Nancy's cruelty had just handed us the ultimate weapon. We walked back to my truck, ignoring Nancy's shrill demands to know what we were doing. As soon as the doors locked, I plugged the card into my laptop adapter. Rows of spreadsheets and raw financial data populated the screen. These were Jason's unencrypted Chief Financial Officer transaction logs. Every hidden account, every wire transfer, every single manipulated number. I closed the laptop, the screen going black. They thought they had buried her. They didn't realize she was a seed, and they had just provided the exact environment for us to grow, a retaliation they could never survive. The raw data on the memory card was a goldmine, but the kill shot required expert verification. I securely transmitted the entire directory to Patricia Lang. She immediately initiated a forensic document audit, bringing in a team of certified bank signature experts to cross-reference the transaction logs with the corresponding physical banking documents. We weren't looking for minor discrepancies. We were looking for the structural failure in Jason's financial architecture. 3 days later, Patricia called me. Her voice, usually a flat professional monotone, held a razor-sharp edge of triumph. The discovery was devastating. I sat Amanda down at the kitchen table and laid the printed forensic report in front of her. The $150,000 insurance trust fund, the money meant to secure Amanda and Emma's future after her parents died, had been completely zeroed out. But it wasn't just a matter of marital misappropriation. Jason hadn't just drained the account. He had cleared it out 8 months prior using an entirely forged signature. The bank documents showed Amanda's name, perfectly mimicked, authorizing the total liquidation of the trust. But a transfer of that magnitude required a legal witness. I pointed to the second signature on the document, highlighted in bright yellow marker by the forensic team, Nancy Vance. Nancy had illegally signed as the witness to the forgery. The dynamic of the conflict shifted instantly in that exact moment. This was no longer a messy civil divorce about asset division. This was a multi-count criminal felony fraud case. Jason and Nancy had crossed the line from toxic family members to convicted felons. The paper trail was absolute. The timestamps on the transaction logs aligned perfectly with the fraudulent bank transfers. Patricia didn't hesitate. She bypassed the family court entirely and marched the forensic audit directly to the county prosecutor's office. Fraud of this magnitude, particularly involving interstate banking wires and a minor's trust, mandated immediate action. Within 48 hours, the county prosecutor reviewed the evidence and issued immediate felony warrants for both Jason and Nancy Vance. There would be no mediation. There would be no quiet settlement behind closed doors. We had stripped away any possibility of legal or social redemption. I watched Amanda process the information. The gaslighting, the midnight eviction, the public humiliation on social media, it all paled in comparison to this absolute betrayal, but she didn't break down. I saw the shift in her eyes, the moment the remaining emotional attachment was permanently severed and replaced by clinical resolve. I didn't feel a shred of pity. When a system is infected with malware, you do not negotiate with the virus. You quarantine it and you delete it. Jason and Nancy had operated under the delusion that their wealth and executive status made them immune to consequence. The complete execution of our judgment was no longer a matter of if, but exactly when. The formal felony warrants were signed on a Wednesday. Knowing the hammer was about to fall, Jason and Nancy showed up on my porch early Thursday morning before the police could track them. The transformation was absolute. Nancy and Jason stood there with hollow, bloodshot eyes. Jason's tailored suit hung loosely on his frame. His executive titles had been stripped the moment the fraud charges went public. Their bank accounts were entirely frozen, their assets seized by the state pending trial. Their reputation, the one thing they valued above all else, was completely destroyed within the local corporate network. They had nothing left but the reality of their own actions. Nancy fell to her knees on the cold concrete. She was weeping, her elitist pride shattered, begging Amanda through the screen door to refuse to cooperate with the prosecutor for the sake of family unity. I stepped forward, pushing the screen door open just enough to stand between Amanda and the wreckage of her former abusers. I moved with cold, unyielding finality. I didn't raise my voice. I simply handed them a copy of the formal eviction reversal and the court-ordered asset freeze. I looked down at Nancy and stated softly, "You taught us that family has limits. We are just returning your lesson." I closed the deadbolt with a loud, definitive click, leaving them in the bitter, freezing cold. It is a profound psychological reality that malicious actors always self-destruct when their financial facade is removed. This is the illusion of power in an empty wallet. People like Jason and Nancy use money not as a tool, but as a weapon to mask their internal void. Their entire sense of superiority, their justification for their cruelty, is entirely dependent on a fabricated economic advantage. They confuse the numbers in their bank account with the value of their character. When you systematically remove the capital, you permanently remove the mask. You don't defeat a narcissist by matching their emotional chaos or appealing to an empathy they do not possess. You defeat them by auditing their reality, dismantling their infrastructure, and removing their unearned leverage. Once their financial power is liquidated, their social influence instantly evaporates, leaving them with nothing but the devastating, crushing weight of their own hollow nature. They aren't powerful. They are just heavily subsidized bullies. And when the subsidy ends, the collapse is total and irreversible. I've come to realize that protecting your peace sometimes requires an act of absolute clinical warfare. Forgiveness isn't always for the other person. Sometimes it's the only way to set yourself free. But true freedom also means securing your perimeter, so the toxic elements can never breach your walls again. Amanda and Emma are safe now, building a life founded on actual love, not transactional abuse. We audited our lives, removed the liabilities, and finally balanced the ledger. Before you go, have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I'd love to know our community.